My name is Elizabeth. I'm called after my grandmother. My birth certificate reads Elizabeth Mary Burke. When I was a child, my mother, my father, and my oldest siblings called me Betty. And that was the name everyone in my small community called me, with the exception of my other siblings. One of my sisters calls me Elizabeth. Two of my sisters call me Liz. But most of my other brothers and sisters call me Bet, B-E-T. And I have one sister who faithfully calls me Betsy Wetsy. Don't ask. There never seemed to be an issue when I was growing up. I knew who called me what, and I acknowledged all of them, well, most of the time. It was when I applied for my first job that I realized Betty was the name that I didn't want to put on the top of my resume. Mostly, I think, because I associated with hearing a long, drawn-out version of my name, Betty, yelled from the front door, reminding me it was my turn to do the large pile of supper dishes from my many other siblings. So my dilemma, what do I call myself? Well, I decided on Elizabeth. That was my given name, so Elizabeth it would be. I thought it seemed more professional. I quickly realized just because I called myself Elizabeth didn't mean I was Elizabeth. It was a phone call I overheard one day at work when the receptionist kept repeating, "I'm sorry, you must be mistaken. Yes, this is the downtown office, but there is no Betty working here." It was my eldest sister on the inquiring end of the telephone line. I was living with her at the time. Apparently, it was her second attempt that day to reach me at work. When she picked me up that evening, she chuckled at my new professional labeling and said, "Well, Elizabeth, that would explain all those wrong numbers at our house, people looking for Elizabeth." I had neglected to mention my many names to acquaintances I'd met through work. After that incident, my eldest sister started calling me Elizabeth or Bet, and she stopped calling me Betty. The first time I returned to my small community and referred to myself as Elizabeth, the response was, "Oh, you're Elizabeth now." So that's what happens when you go away and live grand. To this day, no one in my community calls me Elizabeth. I'll always be Betty. My husband calls me Bet. He quickly noticed everyone in my community calls me Betty, so depending on the location, he refers to me as Betty around the bay and Elizabeth in town. When my husband and I first started dating, he would introduce me to his friends as Bet. They would always respond, "Nice to meet you, Bet." B-E-T. So I would say again, "My name is Bet," and they would still say, "Nice to meet you, Bet." So I accepted it and added it to my name collection. And we still get Christmas cards addressed to Phil and Ben. Before I was married, I was asked several times if I would be changing my name. And I would always have to reply, "No, thank you. I have enough name." I definitely wasn't going to change my name. The name situation remained the same throughout my working years. After I graduated from MUN, I worked in Western Canada for several years with a reforestation company. The second year, I found jobs for my two sisters. We had separate camps. They worked in one, and I worked in the other. When the camps were united, and I met my sister's coworkers, they wanted to know where the fourth sister was. They all thought there was a sister called Liz and a sister called Bet. I've introduced to myself to people at work who decide what my name will be. After being introduced to my last boss as Elizabeth, he decided my name was Liz. I later asked him, because he was British, if he met the Queen of England, Queen Elizabeth, would he automatically call her Queen Liz? And without hesitation, he said, "Probably not. I wouldn't be sending her 50 emails a day as I do you, and writing Liz is far more time efficient than writing Elizabeth." So Liz it was. In the technologically in the technological age of communication, it may now be easier to reclaim your name, but I think it's a little bit too late for me. I recently considered joining Facebook, but I opted out. What would I call myself, and who would people search for? So now, when I meet people, and I say my name is Elizabeth, and they will say to me, what do you prefer to be called? I think I'm going to say Mary.